2002, a man named Fred Francia walked into Trader Joe's with a pitch. He wanted to sell a bottle of wine for $1.99. Not a small bottle, not a sample. A full 750 milliliters bottle of California wine, with a real cork, a real label, and a name that sounded like it belonged in Napa Valley. Everyone in the industry laughed. "You can't make wine that cheap," they said. Not real wine. Not wine that people would actually drink. 12 years later, Francia had sold over 800 million bottles, and most people who drank it had no idea what was actually inside. So what is inside a cheap bottle of wine? And more importantly, what is the wine industry allowed to hide from you? To understand how a bottle of wine can cost less than a cup of coffee, you have to understand how wine is supposed to be made, and then understand all the shortcuts that cheap producers take to bring that price down to almost nothing. Traditional winemaking starts in the vineyard. Quality producers plant their vines on hillsides with low nutrient soils, because when grapevines struggle, they produce fewer grapes, and those fewer grapes have more concentrated, more complex flavors. The grapes are picked by hand, carefully sorted, and only the best fruit makes it into the barrel. Then the wine ages in French oak for a year, sometimes 2, sometimes longer. A single French oak barrel costs around $1,400, and you can only make about 2 of them from an 80-year-old tree. Each barrel holds roughly 300 bottles of wine. That's the expensive version. Here's how cheap wine actually gets made. The grapes come from California's Central Valley, which is flat, hot, and fertile. That's the opposite of what you want for great grapes. But it's perfect for growing a massive volume of them quickly and cheaply. The vines are pushed to produce as much fruit as possible using chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Instead of hand picking, mechanical harvesters roll through the rows, shaking the vines until everything falls into a container. These machines can process 200 tons per day. They don't sort, they don't select, they grab everything. Once the grapes arrive at the winery, things get even more interesting. Instead of aging in expensive oak barrels, cheap wine producers toss oak chips or oak staves into giant stainless steel vats. The chips have more surface area than a barrel wall, so they transfer that toasty, oaky flavor faster and at a fraction of the cost. No need to buy thousands of barrels. No need for the warehouse space to store them. No need to wait years for the wine to develop. But here's where it gets really surprising. The wine industry in the United States isn't regulated by the FDA. Unlike food or medicine, winemakers aren't required to list their ingredients on the bottle. All they have to disclose is the alcohol content and whether the wine contains sulfites. That's it. Everything else is optional. And because of that, there's a long list of additives that go into cheap wine that most people have never heard of. The most controversial one is called Mega Purple. It sounds like a comic book villain, but it's a grape juice concentrate made from a variety called Ruby Red. This grape has both red skin and red flesh, which is unusual. Most red wine grapes actually have clear juice and only get their color from skin contact during fermentation. Mega Purple is so intensely pigmented that 1 or 2 drops can turn a full glass of water nearly black. Its purpose is to make cheap red wine look darker and richer because consumers tend to associate deep color with higher quality. But it doesn't just add color. Mega Purple has around 68% sugar content, so it also makes the wine taste sweeter, rounder, and more fruit-forward. It can mask flaws in poorly made wine, cover up off flavors, and create a uniform taste across massive batches. According to industry reports, Mega Purple is used by the vast majority of producers, making wine that retails for under $20 a bottle. Some estimates suggest it's being added to over 25 million bottles annually. And here's the part that really bothers wine professionals. It doesn't just fix cheap wine, it makes all cheap wine taste the same. The terroir, the grape variety, the unique characteristics of a specific vineyard, all of that gets bulldozed into a generic, jammy sweetness that's been engineered to appeal to the widest possible audience. But no winery will ever admit to using it. There's no label, no disclosure. The wine industry treats Mega Purple like baseball treated steroids in the 90s. Everyone knows it's happening. Nobody wants to be the one to say it out loud. Now you might be wondering, if cheap wine is full of shortcuts and additives, can people actually taste the difference between a $5 bottle and a $50 bottle? This is where it gets humbling. Researchers have run large-scale blind taste tests, and the results are consistently embarrassing for the wine world. In one study that analysed over 6,000 blind tastings, non-expert drinkers actually rated more expensive wines slightly lower than cheaper ones. In a brain imaging study, participants tasted 5 Cabernet Sauvignons ranging from $5 to $90, but only 3 actual wines were used. The same $5 wine was secretly served as a $45 wine, and people genuinely enjoyed the expensive version more. Brain scans confirmed it. The pleasure centers in their brains lit up more when they believed the wine cost more. So the experience of drinking wine isn't just about what's in the glass. It's about the story you've been told about what's in the glass. And cheap wine producers understand this better than anyone. Take 2 Buck Chuck. The label says, bottled in Napa Valley, which sounds prestigious. But the grapes come from the Central Valley, hours away from Napa's famous vineyards. The wine is bottled at a facility near the Napa airport. One journalist described it as freeway aged, meaning the only aging it gets is the truck ride from the Central Valley to the bottling plant. The corks are composites, basically compressed cork particles with a thin, real cork veneer glued to the bottom. The bottles are lightweight to save on shipping. According to one wine journalist's analysis, the actual wine inside a bottle of Charles Shaw has a retail value of about 75 cents. The rest of the price covers the glass, the cork, the label and distribution. And yet, a Charles Shaw Chardonnay once won Best Chardonnay from California at the California State Fair. Several other varieties have taken home medals at regional competitions, judged blind by industry professionals. That says something both about how good cheap wine has gotten and about how unreliable our taste buds can be when we don't know what we're drinking. The truth is, the gap between cheap wine and expensive wine has been shrinking for decades. Advances in fermentation science, custom-engineered yeast strains, and additives have raised the floor on what a $5 bottle can taste like. Winemakers can now order specific yeasts that produce wine with predetermined flavor profiles. They can add tartaric acid to fix the balance of grapes from hot climates. They can add sugar to compensate for grapes from cool climates. They can fine the wine with everything from clay to egg whites, to fish bladders, to remove unwanted particles, though those fining agents are removed before bottling. None of this is illegal, none of it is dangerous, but very little of it matches the romantic story that wine marketing wants you to believe, the one about sunlit hillsides, generations of family tradition, and a winemaker who can taste the terroir in every sip. The cheap wine industry isn't selling you tradition, it's selling you consistency. It's a factory operation dressed up to look like a craft. And the reason it works is that for the overwhelming majority of people, the story on the label matters more than the liquid in the bottle. So should you feel bad about drinking cheap wine? That's genuinely all that matters. But the next time you pick up a $7 bottle with a beautiful label and a name that sounds like a French countryside estate, just know that what you're holding is a product of industrial agriculture, chemical engineering, and a regulatory system that lets winemakers keep their ingredient list a secret. The most honest thing anyone in the wine industry has ever said might be this. Fred Franzia, the man behind 2 Buck Chuck, once declared that no bottle of wine should ever cost more than $10. Coming from a man who owns over 40,000 acres of vineyards and has sold over 1 billion bottles, that's not idealism. That's a business model. And it worked.